Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'm pleased to call to order the 126th meeting of the Massachusetts Gaming Commission, 10:30 June 26th, as usual at the Boston Convention Center. We will start with approval of minutes. Commissioner McHugh.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The first set of minutes for approval is set for June 10 through 13. It's actually 4 days worth of minutes, and that is the presentations and deliberations with respect to the award of the prospective award of the license to MGM in Springfield. So I would move that those minutes be approved in the form in which they appear in the book, with the reservation for correction of typographical and mechanical errors.
Second.
Is this, this is June 10 through 13, right?
Yes.
Okay.
So it's unusual.
Right.
We usually have each one for a single day, but
Right.
these are all related and integrated, so that's why we did it that way.
Any comments on those minutes? All in favor of the motion? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it unanimously.
And then the second set of minutes is for June 12. On June 12, which was in the middle of that June 10 to 13 period, obviously, we had a regular business meeting that we interrupted on a couple of occasions to deal with the license award meeting. But the June 12 minutes are the minutes of our regular business meeting that took place on that day. So I would move that those minutes be approved in the form in which they appear in the packet, with, again, the usual reservation for correction of typographical and mechanical errors.
Second?
Second.
I have one question. On page 2 at 1:46 p.m., it says, we agreed to cap the total number of electronic table games at 2%.
Yes, 2% of,
We did that.
subject to comment. But that was, we talked about the fact that the request was for, I forgot the exact number, but 2% of the 1,250 would be 25 games. And that seemed like a reasonable number that would not adversely affect the casino interests, subject, of course, to their comments, and would satisfy what Penn was asking for, and was a reasonable number to deal with.
Remember that too?
Yeah, I forget the 2%, but I remember the discussion about having a cap.
Okay.
Yeah.
The
And
2% was working backwards from 25.
Right.
3% was what
Was-
was in the,
Right.
Another agency had 3%.
Now, there's other alternatives, but I think we discussed that, and as a matter of course, it's still out for public comment as a regulation, so we could amend it if we needed to.
Right. Okay.
right. That was basically a conversation starter.
Okay. Any other discussion, comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it unanimously. And we will move on to Workforce Development and Supplier Diversity. Director Griffin.
Good morning, Commissioners.
Morning.
Good morning.
We have with us today our community college partners. You may remember that in order to ensure that Massachusetts has a workforce that is trained and ready for the new employment opportunities that each casino will offer in Massachusetts, the more than 3,000 jobs at each Category 1 casino, and the 500 to 600 at the slot parlor. We have partnered with the Massachusetts Casino Careers Training Institute, MCCTI. The MCCTI is the statewide community college collaborative training initiative that's focused on ensuring our workforce is trained. All 15 of the state's community colleges are involved, with a lead partner designated in each region. We've invited representatives to update the commission and the public about their process. So I'd like to welcome William Messner, President of Holyoke Community College, President of North Shore Community College, Patricia Gentili, Jeff Hayden and Bob LePage, who are from the Training and Workforce Options, the joint effort of Holyoke Community College and Springfield Community College, which is the lead for MCCTI. We will also have Mary Ellen Brett from Massasoit, John Carissimo and Teresa Romanovich from Bristol Community College. Bristol has campuses in Fall River, New Bedford, and Attleboro, and is working with our Category 2 licensee, Penn National, regarding training for Plain Ridge Park Casino. From Region A, we have Alfonsina Andreoletti from Roxbury Community College, Mary Beth Barton from Bunker Hill Community College, and I hope I didn't miss anyone, but we have the crew here for you today, and I'm going to ask President Messner to lead us off.
Well, thank you very much, and it's good to be here again with the commission. Let me start off by thanking you. In your wisdom, you now have developed and approved school certification regs for helping us ensure qualified training and qualified applicants for the gaming industry, and we're most appreciative of that. We're particularly appreciative of the partnership with Jill Griffin and her colleague David Acosta. They've been terrific to work with. And if I can embarrass Commissioner Stebbins a little bit here, he's been absolutely wonderful in taking the lead on workforce issues for the commission. As Jill indicated, we want to give you a sense this morning of what's going on statewide. That MCCTI is a statewide collaboration, not just of community colleges, but an array of workforce providers, regional employment boards, one-stop career centers, and the like. And so we'd like to give you a flavor of that. First, just to tell you what you already know, but we're going to say it again. This is about jobs, lots of jobs. And these are jobs for individuals in the gaming industry focused on those who need jobs the most. We project that 7,000 to 8,000 people in just the slot casino and the 2 resort casinos in the Westin and Boston will be able to take advantage of this opportunity. In order to generate that number of individuals, we will probably interact with at least 25,000 people who will attempt to take advantage and apply for these positions. It's important to note that when the governor signed this legislation, he used the term middle skills jobs. And what the governor was talking about were jobs that required more than a high school education, less than a 4-year baccalaureate degree, jobs that will involve training that the community colleges and other workforce providers are ready, willing, and God willing, able to provide. The other thing about these jobs that we've learned is that the gaming industry has been particularly focused on advancement of its own. And so you talk to individuals at the higher levels of many of these gaming establishments, and what you find is that many of them have worked their way up from middle-skill jobs. So this is a unique opportunity, it seems to me, to provide training and to provide access to jobs, particularly in our center cities like Springfield and Holyoke in the West, for individuals who aspire not just to a beginning job, but to a career. And we believe it's a unique opportunity, and we're very enthusiastic about being involved. 3 training sites, 1 for each gaming area, and we're collaborating. Today we have with us Patricia Gentile, who is the new president at North Shore, who just serendipitously comes to us from Atlantic Cape Community College, where, as we've told you several times, we're going to be exploiting their curriculum in gaming rather than reinventing the wheel. So we're blessed to have Patricia coming on board in a leadership position. We've been busy. We've been busy across an array of categories. You'll hear more about that as we bring folks up here to tell you what's been going on in the various regions. I do want to stress, though, two items on this last slide in terms of recent highlights. Recent highlights, Bob. Is this the next one? There you go. Okay. One is that I think folks who haven't immersed themselves in the gaming industry and workforce needs tend to view the jobs that are available there as what you might see on television or as you walk through a casino, individuals involved in gaming itself. And while there are certainly an array of jobs in the gaming area, in fact, the majority of jobs, as we've talked about before, are not in gaming per se. The largest array of jobs, in fact, are in the culinary and hospitality area. That area tends to be, for many areas of the state, certainly for the western part of the state where I come from, an area of great growth and great potential. And so what we are finding is that as we go about talking, in our case, to MGM and their needs in this area where they're going to have to hire literally hundreds of individuals in the culinary and hospitality area, we're finding that we are able to leverage that interest with the interest of others in that industry and begin to develop training programs that we can scale up to meet an array of needs both for MGM, but more broadly for the hospitality and culinary industry as a whole, and quite frankly, leveraging the resources of MGM for that purpose, which will benefit the region as a whole. The other thing I wanted to stress,
Can I ask a question about that?
adult
Bill?
basic education.
Bill, excuse me?
Sure.
I just wanted to ask a question about the culinary and hospitality.
Sure.
Unite here has a training facility here in the Boston area somewhere, but I don't know whether it's culinary or hospitality or both. Yeah, how does that relate to what will be going on in Eastern Mass and with your whole culinary and hospitality training?
We've been sharing information with them, and they're a part of the collaborative. We will be looking to replicate in Western Mass and have already started to replicate some very similar programs.
So will the Unite Here facility in Eastern Mass be the focal point? You're not gonna create another?
I think here in Eastern
I'm
Mass.
sorry, Eastern Mass, yeah.
Here in Eastern Mass, part of the next step in the dialogue is inventorying the total training capacity. We met recently with a number of organizations, including Unite Here, to get a sense on, is there enough little physical space to do this scale-up that's needed for the industry here, as well as the growth issue, where Convention Center being an example
Right.
for hospitality. Their initial reaction from the session that Director Griffin hosted was that there really is a need for partnering on physical space. Unite Here has some space currently, but other organizations in the region will have an opportunity to provide culinary services too. So will be luckily multiple providers in the region. So those dialogues are underway. Not to get further along, but yes.
Yeah, okay.
That's a
But
challenge.
so you're pretty closely coordinated with those folks in their planning and their capacity? Okay.
And one of the benefits of this initiative is the fact that those sorts of conversations are occurring now, which quite frankly hadn't occurred with the frequency and the depth that they had in the past. And that's all to the good, not just in terms of this initiative, but for the broader array of initiatives around which hospitality can grow. So those conversations are not limited to any one particular organization. They're going on with a multiplicity of organizations.
Multiple organizations in each region.
Right,
Yes, sir.
right.
And then finally, adult basic education. What we're finding, certainly in the West, and my suspicion is in the other two regions as well, that simply providing training in specific areas for the casinos is not going to be sufficient if we want to reach those individuals who are most in need of jobs. Adult basic education, education that provides a GED, education that provides English language skills, education that provides the basic soft and even hard skills that individuals are going to need to be successful in a training program, be it in the gaming or non-gaming areas, is going to be absolutely critical. And again, over in the West, in our discussions with MGM, they certainly understand that adult basic education is going to be critical to any effort at meeting a workforce need of 2,500 to 3,000 individuals, particularly with a focus on populations in Springfield, Holyoke, and Chicopee. So with that, I want to turn it over to our regional partners, and John Caressimo
Like you do it.
Caressimo from Bristol will lead off in terms of the effort over with Penn National Gaming.
Good morning, Commissioners. And again, I would like to thank you for this opportunity to inform you of what Bristol Community College is doing to meet this challenge. Bristol Community College has taken a two-pronged approach to this situation. We are working both with the non-credit side of the house in our workforce development area, and our Associate Vice President, Teresa Romanovich, will fill you in on what we're doing there. And we're also working on the credit side with an associate degree program. We created, in response to the passing of the Gaming Act, through our president, Jack Sprague, we created the Catch Institute, which stands for Culinary Arts, Tourism, Casino, and Hospitality. The Culinary Arts program had existed at the college for the past 29 years. It's going into its 30th year in this September, and I had the good fortune to begin that initiative, and still am actively involved in the Culinary Arts program. The other programs, the hospitality programs, travel and tourism, casino, were started in the past 8 to 10 years with varying degrees of success. Culinary Arts was in Division 2, the other programs were in Division 3. When we created the Catch...
What does that mean, Division 2 and 3?
It's just the different divisions, the academic divisions within the college.
Oh, okay.
So one is a business division, one is liberal arts, and so on and so on. When we created the Catch Institute, we brought Culinary Arts over into Division 3, the business division, and combined all of those programs. The first thing that you have the paperwork in front of you, yes. The first thing that we did was combine all of the courses, get rid of all of the courses that existed, get rid of the degrees that existed, and propose a new degree. We proposed the Associate of Applied Science in Hospitality Management with 4 concentrations. Concentrations being tourism management, casino management, hotel management, and food service management. And what we did within that degree program is the first 2 semesters, semesters 1 and semester 2, regardless of the concentration that you are going to be taking, we made them common. In other words, all the students, regardless of what concentration you want, will be taking the identical courses in their first 2 semesters. The thought behind this was that we would give all of the students a basic understanding of the hospitality industry in food service, in travel and tourism, and in casino. And then, when they made their decision as to which area they were going to go into, they would bring with them a broader background of knowledge in the hospitality industry. So we're going to be, and we're currently accepting our first class for this in September of this year. So my assumption is that within a year we should be pretty much up to speed with that degree program. The culinary program is the exact same, pretty much exactly the same degree that's been in existence at the school since its inception. There have been a number of changes, of course, but we didn't do any changes with regard to the Catch Institute. All of these students within this program will be working in a cohort model. So in other words, they know exactly when their classes will be. They know exactly where they're going to be doing 1 semester from now, 2 semesters from now. The hope is that the success of the hospitality and tourism programs will come about as soon as all of the jobs are available out there. They sort of languished on the vine because there really was no big push in the Commonwealth for hospitality and for tourism. So with the initiative of the casino, with the initiative of the additional hotels, the thought is that students go where the jobs are. Students do not want to take training for jobs that do not currently exist in their particular area. So that's why we in Southeast Massachusetts area are certainly waiting for the day when the announcement comes as to who's going to be getting the license in that particular area. Additionally, we are working with Massasoit Community College, and we are working with Penn Gaming to develop training courses that would meet their needs. The thought is, again, my thought is that we will need 2 groups of people to populate these industries. We're going to need 1 group of people immediately. The first group coming online is going to be Penn Gaming, and they're going to be early to mid-spring. So they're going to be the first group. They're going to be our training ground, if you will. The people who are going to be going into that will be needing the short-term training. When all of the casinos are up and operating, there's the need for replacement people. The feeling is that these replacements will be taking place with the people with the associate degrees. So we have two distinct groups. The group that is going to be going for training and the group that is going to be going for an education. Our firm thought is that we will prepare an educated workforce. Okay? I'd like to bring, Terry's right up here. Terry, if you'd like to talk for a moment about
Sure.
the workforce.
Good morning, everyone.
Morning.
We've been pretty proactive in Southeastern Mass, working in collaboration with Massasoit, but also very strategically working with our workforce investment boards and our career centers, because as our colleague said from Western Mass, we've really got to take individuals from where they are, build an infrastructure to get them to where they need to be able to support this industry. So we've kind of taken a jump start at that and worked out a training program in collaboration with 2 of our local career centers, the Bristol and the New Bedford. So one in Fall River, one in New Bedford, to start to look at who's our population and how do we want to address them. And because we already have in place the academic pathway, we needed to start with a workforce pathway that builds into and is portable into that career, to the degree program, so people can see an actual career pathway and not feel like they're getting into a dead-end job, but feel like, okay, we're supporting them and we're looking at this strategically to sort of get them on this career pathway to a real sustainable, employable job. So we've actually worked with the Career Center and looked at what are the funding streams that typically come into a career center. Many of them are workforce training funds, which require a 20-hour-a-week training program. How do we design that so that they're getting 20 hours a week for as long as we can while they're collecting unemployment, shore up as many of their skills, and as our colleague said in Western Mass, give them the adult basic ed if they don't have the high school diploma, build that into the curriculum so that at the end of the day, we're giving them enough of a strength that they can take on these entry-level jobs, which we know are going to come first out of the ballpark, but then working in collaboration with the academic side, saying, can you validate this training on your end and give some college credit to it so we can say, okay, come here, we understand you don't have a high school diploma, we understand you don't have training, we're going to give you the high school diploma, we're going to give you this baseline training, but it's going to be portable, and we're going to try to give you up to 6 to 9 credits in the academic area and encourage them through validating academic credit, sort of credit for where credit is due, and get them onto that career pathway. So we can serve the immediate needs of what we see are coming down with these jobs, and the more that we spend time with Penn, find out that they are basically entry level for the first round, but there's a potential for growth. And how do we build that strategically, bringing in our partners from the workforce system? So we've kind of taken that model to do that with them and looked at the funding stream. So when someone pulls the lever and says, go do this, we've already got the thing in place, we've already started some recruitment for this, and we know that we can train them for all of these industries. So we've built one set that builds right into the Catch Institute, which Chef Carissimo just gave you an overview on, but we also, when we were looking at the jobs, realized there were plenty in security coming up and a lot in surveillance. So we're also working with the criminal justice program and with the chief of police from the campus to sort of say, how do we influence that as well, and how do we get people so that they can jump into these jobs that are going to be available within those two industries, security and surveillance in particular seem to come out as big industries, and so our chief of police said, wow, we can also give them some work experience because we have surveillance campus obviously throughout the campus, and so we're building that infrastructure that gives them the hands-on applied, so we're trying to build internships within all of these as well, so they get some work experience, they get the basic skills, and they get all those work readiness things. So taking the population that we all want to serve, that unemployed, underemployed individual, and shoring them up. We've got some time now, so we're starting now. We've built the infrastructure, and really working with the workforce development system. So we feel like we've got a really good infrastructure that takes it. The Associate Vice President for Workforce Development, so I've been able to influence what goes on that side of the house. We've worked collaboratively with the academic side to say, okay, will you give me 3 credits for this? Will you give me 1 credit if we do this? And then working also with those that are doing the cooperative education part, can we also get 1 credit and get them some work experience? So at the end of the day, when someone calls and says, what have you got for employees? We have employees that have had some work experience, that have got the best skill sets, and that are either working on or have their high school diploma so they can move into academics. So that kind of dual enrollment career pathway vision. So we've strategically, from a workforce development plan, feel like we're doing that well, and we're doing it in line with what are the available funds for individuals in these categories. And they're looking for, like I said, this 20-hour-a-week program, and I think I sent that to you, and I'm certainly happy to send you the draft of what we're doing.
Thank you.
Good morning, Commissioners. Jeff Hayden from Holyoke Community College, and representing TWO and our efforts in the Western region.
Excuse me, if you're going to switch regions, I just wanted to follow up on Eastern.
Sure.
I thought we were going to hear from Massasoit too in the. No, okay. So well, it's all right. Do you have a clear understanding of how many jobs in what categories with what needs the Plain Ridge folks?
So they were pretty clear about giving us an overview, and that's when we really started realizing the security and the surveillance were pretty high. So they said, I don't remember the percentages, but they certainly were clear in saying we're going to have this percentage of people who are going to need the culinary, we're going to have this percentage of people who might, the other area we're looking at is the whole groundskeeping, because we're also saying this whole idea of the grounds is going to be a big deal.
All the facilities, right?
Exactly. So we're working with, we have an organic farming program, we have a non-credit gardening program, so we're trying to look at, okay, do we add landscaping as part of this? So they told us how many jobs are going to be available in that. And they actually gave us percentages at our last meeting with them.
Okay.
So we have a really clear understanding of that. So when we submitted this, I was sort of saying, okay, so these are the jobs we're trying to
Right, okay.
help people understand.
Could you send us that outline? I'd be really
Sure.
interested in seeing.
Yeah.
Do we have it already?
I was just going to say, I think we got it from
Okay, great. The one category of jobs that I don't hear referred to as yet is the real gaming specific, whether they're the slots techs or the money room managers or whatever all else. I mean, you're not going to have card games and table games, but.
Yeah, so that's
Could I-
built into the gaming.
Could I respond to that,
Right.
Commissioner?
Yeah,
Yes, within the Associate of Applied Science and Hospitality Management, in the casino option, there are the casino games. Bristol Community College is currently in the process of putting together a gaming lab that will have blackjack tables, poker tables, a roulette wheel, and craps table. So we will.
but none of that is ready to go, and Plain Ridge is going to be starting to hire people, I assume, soon into the beginning of next year for these.
Right, those courses are not going to be relative to Plainridge. They will,
Well,
because obviously-
I'm talking about Plainridge, right? I know there's time on the casinos, it's Plainridge that I'm concerned about.
We have the curriculum ready to go on that, as we have been working with the Gaming Commission to get through the finals of the regulation approvals for gaming schools before we get any further on recruitment. And that process, we have met with Penn National to get the timelines that they would expect to onboard people. And you might hear from their team today. Most of those programs are intensive 20-hour-a-week programs that would be in maximum, I think, is 200 hours, so it would be around a 10-week program. So we do have sufficient time, and we have met with them relative to the quantities. And the quantities are very reasonable to recruit in that region. We are not in a situation as we are with MGM where that's 1,000 people. I believe it's closer to the 150 to 100 in the pure gaming jobs, Commissioner.
Right.
That is in the works, but we did want to wait and not get the cart before the horse, for lack of a term, until the commission had gone through the gaming school regs.
All right, well, but don't let us get in your way. If that's a veiled way of saying that we're holding you back, let us know, so.
It's not, it's
Okay.
just we wanted to make sure that we didn't announce our schools before we knew exactly what needed to be
Okay.
qualified for the school, but we have gotten the curriculum, we do have head counts, we do have some ideas from
Okay.
our partners how we would recruit those individuals.
Okay, good. And did you say that we are going to be hearing from Penn National today as part of this conversation?
I believe they're on the agenda, sir.
They're on the agenda to discuss the diversity plan and their workforce plan as well, so.
Okay. All right, great. Thank you.
Hello again. You had mentioned earlier about, the makeup of the partnerships in the various regions, and just wanted to highlight a few things in terms of Western Massachusetts. We have over 30 partners who are part of this workforce collaborative, this workforce consortium. It includes the hotel training school here in Boston as a partner in Western Mass with us, because we knew the importance of having their expertise in terms of transitioning folks who are at basic education and language levels into jobs. And we wanted to make sure that we were able to work with them to replicate and expand their model. So they're partners with us in the West as well as being statewide partners with us. We have been working, in addition to working with those 30 partners, we've been holding community meetings and briefings, especially industry sector meetings for those who are concerned about, where are all the people going to come for these jobs, and how are we going to deal with folks who are transitioning from one industry to another. And so we've been working very closely with the financial service sector. We've also been working very closely with the hospitality sector, as you can imagine, with other industry sectors in Western Massachusetts, to start to define not only what are the issues, but what is the process going to be to provide quality talent for all businesses. I think in our partnership with MGM, one of the things that came clear very early on, that although they're concerned about how they're going to fill their ranks, they also recognize that the workforce issues that they're going to be grappling with are workforce issues that are met every single day by other businesses in Western Massachusetts. And so when we talked about hospitality and culinary issues, they mentioned to us, this has to be a regional solution, not an MGM solution, but a regional solution. And so they were very clear to us that going out of the gate, they're going to need 300 line cooks. And they defined that for us. They defined other
300
numbers.
what?
Line cooks.
Line cooks.
Yeah, and they defined many of those numbers. Some of it was in confidence that they shared with us initially, but they are defining the level of need, the level of demand that they have for particular positions. And so, for example, in that line cook area in Western Massachusetts, there's already a demand of over 200 folks in the region's hospitality area. So you add a demand for 300 more, and it's a significant demand. In Western Massachusetts, the culinary training network are the 5 vocational high schools, Holyoke Community College, and UMass's hospitality program, and that's it. We go out to, or down to Hartford, you go out to Albany, you come to Boston, you go up to Montpelier, you have other schools. So in the Western New England region, you know, we have to build an infrastructure with those partners, our vocational schools and with UMass, in order to successfully handle this pressing demand for culinary and hospitality workers in the region. And so we talked very specifically with MGM about how to do that, how to create feeders from vocational schools into the college, the community college, and then how to transition folks from the community college into jobs or into further education, depending on their own goals and the needs of the business. That discussion, I think, really helped us shape some of the programs that we need to do. And Commissioner Crosby, to your question about, well, what about the gaming jobs? The first job that they mentioned was the culinary-related jobs. The second job they mentioned, obviously, were the gaming jobs. That those don't exist in Massachusetts. How do we scale that up? And so they talked with us about using our model for curriculum and creating that program. As Bob mentioned, we have the curriculum, we have a sense of what the demand is going to be and the need is going to be. We have a strong sense of how many people in the community are looking for those jobs. At the career fairs that we've been at over the past year, we've collected somewhere around 400 names in terms of people who are interested in that kind of training. And I'm sure as it gets posted that jobs are being posted and trainings being made available, that number will increase. And so in terms of the gaming jobs, they were very clear that they will provide expertise to us and work with us in order to make sure that they have the right people on the ground. One of the responses that we did in terms of the potential need for hospitality, hotel in front of the house, and also culinary, we, through a grant program that we were able to get in the month of June, we did a hospitality and culinary program. It was a free program to folks. And what we were trying to test was the ability to give people short-term, quick training that would move them up one level, one skill, one certification at a time. So in other words, someone who might start at an entry-level position, if they have a serve-safe credential, does that get them an extra $1 an hour or those types of concerns, so that we can start to define for folks what are the stackable skills that they will need. So we know that a person who's entering in the hospitality end is going to need to have a career readiness certificate. We know that they're going to have a customer service certificate. We know that they're going to have ServSafe or tips or those types of things. And so how can we stack those in short increments to add to their skills and to show them how they can turn a job into an opportunity and eventually into a career, as our partners from Bristol mentioned, creating those pathways, and as I mentioned, going up to UMass for graduate degrees in hospitality are even a possibility. So those are the two focuses that MGM has shared with us. The other thing that's become very clear with both MGM and other developers that we've worked with over time is that in Western Massachusetts, we do not have a strong culture of customer service, and we do not have the supervisory leadership in customer service that the Boston region has or the Cape Cod region has in Massachusetts. And primarily, that's because of the types of industry and business that have been in Western Mass. It's always been a hospitality industry, but it hasn't been with that high level of customer service or tourism focus that has been in the rest of the state. Even in the Berkshires, it's much more important than it has been in Springfield, Holyoke, and Chicopee, and in the core of Western Mass. And so getting customer service training and customer service programming that goes across the types of training that we're creating, we recognize that that's an imperative for us to do, and so we're working on that as well. My boss mentioned the importance of ABE. If we're going to scale the workforce, we need to bring more people into the workforce. Western Massachusetts, flat population, very limited immigration. Therefore, what can we do? We need to take the folks who are there, who need more skills, need more education, need more language skills, and we need to help them get into the workforce or advance in the workforce. And so that's very important. And a couple of the things that we've done this past year, we, at Hoya Community College, we have an ABE base of about $2 million in terms of funds that we use to do adult basic education and English for speakers of other languages. In collaboration with STCC, we applied for additional funds that added another $2.5 million to that effort. And so now we have centers in Holyoke, in Ludlow, in Springfield. We have satellite efforts in Westfield and Northampton, and we're going to try to also grow it within the urban core of the region as well. But between STCC and HCC, we are the largest ABE ESOL provider, and by scaling that up, we're hoping that that becomes a funnel directly into workforce skills training programs for the casino industry, as well as for all of the industries in Western Massachusetts. We've applied for the Pay for Success grant, which many of you might have heard about. It's a new ABE model that Governor Patrick has put forward through the administration and finance part of the executive office. We've applied for $6 million, and it's essentially to take people from ABE, combine workplace skills training with that ABE in order to get them placed into jobs and other educational opportunities. We're working also with the state on the Career Readiness Certificate, which is to try to provide the free assessment to individuals so that they can take that assessment and then define what their skills are, match them to jobs that are posted, and therefore show that they have a credential to get those jobs, or to identify the skill training gaps that they have in order to get training to fill those gaps. And I wouldn't be a good workforce development professional if I didn't end with a commercial, and that is that you need to go to www.mccti.org, where you'll see a lot of information that we've put together on workforce training and workforce opportunities. We've done it in concert with Jill and her office, and it's a strong resource of information. We are hoping to advance it to a higher level fairly soon, where we will actually be able to say, what career are you interested in? Have someone click on specific categories, and then be able to find what are the job opportunities, what are the training opportunities, how do I get to that job, and to do it all online with information there for individuals so they can do the type of career planning that's necessary for them to get the job or get the career they want.
Jill, do we link to that site? On our
Yes.
Yes, we do.
Yes, we do.
And vice versa.
Yeah. Okay,
So that's what's going on in the Wild West.
great, exciting.
It is. I had a question. Obviously, there's going to be a high demand for the initial staffing. And you talked about 300 jobs in the 300 line cook jobs, for example, plus the 200 that are already there. But after that initial 300 are filled, there's going to be a tailing off, and the demand, the annual demand or the periodic demand is going to be much lower. How do you deal with the initial demand and then deal with the residual demand that's going to be over time? Because
Right.
once people get in there, though, the turnover rate's going to be hopefully low.
Right. Traditionally, in hospitality areas, the turnover is a little bit higher. So, for example, if you've heard from the casino operators that they have a 20% turnover or 15% turnover. In hospitality-related jobs, usually that's significantly higher, 25 to 30%. However, your point's well taken. Our approach is to try to create a variety of training options. As John mentioned from Bristol, we need workforce skills training classes, which are short-term, intensive, and quick turnaround. Then we also need career tracks and pathways so that for those who are incumbent workers, so for example, someone gets that initial job, you know, what's the training, what are the educational opportunities for them to go to the next step and to the next level? And so we have to create that system. Obviously, at some time, there will be a right sizing in terms of the amount of training we have to do. But in Western Mass, we're pretty confident that this hospitality, culinary-related need is not going to be satisfied quickly.
Judge, Commissioner, one of the things that we've worked on and are talking about in each of the regions goes back to that capacity. So I'll just give a quick example. We know for 300 to 400 people at an average class size of 15, how many classes we need to run. And then as we take that against our instructional capacity, the facility capacity, that's where we've worked with the city of Springfield, who has made Putnam Vocational available to us to use that in the afternoons and the evening. Chicopee Comprehensive, looking at Westfield Vocational as a strategy, rather than create facilities that we won't need long-term to have a scalability. We're talking about similar strategies here in the Boston region.
Got it. Thank you.
That's really good to hear.
Right.
That was a good question. I did have another question about Eastern Mass. If I remember correctly, the host community agreement requires a 90% of the hires to come from the host and surrounding communities. Do I hear that? Do I remember that right? So, for Penn National, yeah. Sorry. That's a small area with a really targeted objective. I think at Springfield, it's more like 50% or something, 90%. What kind of special efforts have you either got in place or anticipate? You almost need to go door to door to find unemployed people and pull them out of their buildings in order to have enough to meet that 90% number in those, what are the 5 little towns?
I'm going to let Penn talk about that. With more
Okay.
specifics, I can talk relative to the meeting that Director Griffin hosted, where we were able to start to talk about the ability to look within the state's database of those who are unemployed and start to get a sense of what are the quantities in each of the communities and having communication to those individuals about the career opportunities. It's not unlike what we do on a regular basis. The community colleges have what are called navigators that work in conjunction with the career one-stops where we can provide information on a constant basis. So there is a way to map the unemployed population and the current population for the host as well as the surrounding communities, and then look into, I guess I would call them neighboring surrounding communities. Might be the Fall River community, and say, after we've exhausted our efforts in this region, how do we inform people in other regions? So we have started that mapping of population.
Okay.
In the Penn region, the numbers aren't as great.
Right.
So the challenge isn't as wide as the Springfield region.
Yeah, not only that, but also in the case of Penn, there were already a lot of existing employees that, to the point that Mr. Hayden was making, stacking additional skills, et cetera, might be really helpful.
Yeah.
So we have Bunker Hill Community College in North Shore that.
For Eastern Mass, okay.
Thank you. I'm Bogusza Wojciechowska. I'm the Dean of Professional Studies at Bunker Hill Community College and the point person for the colleges in Region A. So what we've been very busy for the past few years. Some of what we're doing has been presented already as occurring in other regions. We've been working closely in terms of the community colleges, collaborating. We've also been working with the investment boards, the career centers, and the hotel training school. We want to ensure that the training is delivered efficiently and that we don't duplicate our services. We've also held meetings with the developers to identify the jobs and training needs. We have a meeting on July the 11th, which is going to be more of a sit down and let's flesh out exactly how many numbers, what the numbers are like in the different categories, what kind of training will be needed, not only the front side of the house, but also the back side of the house. And then all the partners in the region will compile what I think somebody referred to as the inventory training capacity, because we need to see, some of us have got culinary programs, others don't. For those of us who are urban colleges, there is a space shortage, as you can imagine. Bunker Hill is bursting at the seams. So we need to start planning well ahead as to what kind of capacity we can all handle. We'll be discussing the training for both the games and also the training that's more credit focused in IT or in communication skills, hospitality, security, customer service, management, marketing, accounting. We've had some preliminary conversations with the developers, and even though we have a credit-bearing curriculum fully developed, at this point, it seems that just rolling out an introductory casino operations management course is what they felt was the way to go. So at this point, we're not sure whether or not we're going to develop, accounting for casinos or marketing for casinos. That's still, it's available, we have it developed, but we're not sure whether at this point it's actually going to be necessary to put in place. We are interested, as has been mentioned in the other regions, in creating pathways for the workers, so it's not just a matter of a job, that it becomes a career. The navigators that we refer to for the career centers will be very involved in this. Also, the colleges are interested in what we call the wraparound services, so there's real support and advising available to the people who are in this track, so they understand what their options are beyond getting some non-credit training. We're planning to really ramp up the adult basic education. I mean, there's a need for that anyway in the Boston area, but I think with this initiative we need to expand our capacity. So actually Bunker Hill's already looking at acquiring another building down the road from where we have our main campus, because there is a lot of need for that. So I think in summary, much of what I think the regions are all overlapping in terms of what we're doing. We're all following the same kind of model, and I think that we will be ready to offer the training when it's required. And I think we'll have a much better idea after July the 11th as to the numbers and precisely who can offer what.
Are you meeting with both of the applicants on July 11th?
Yes, we've invited both.
Just help me understand in terms of, the regional group that you're building and continue to build, the number of organizations I would expect you're going to invite to the table are probably going to be substantial.
Yes.
But, we've heard they cover the regional employment boards, workforce employment boards. Are you having success kind of drilling down into the weeds to find more, early on we were told that more neighborhood-based organizations can be helpful to help encourage people who may need the training services that you're talking about, probably fall into that underemployed or unemployed category. Are you finding success recruiting those types of partners to the table?
We haven't drilled down to that level yet, but that's certainly, it's a good point. We need to, once we have the training ready, I think we need to really expand our outreach. But I'll make a note of that maybe we can look at some of the, we have various partners, like the Latino Alliance or ROCA. I mean, there are various people that we're already working with that we can certainly bring into the conversation.
Okay.
In the case of one of the developers, they provide on a pretty constant basis those organizations that they're partnering with, and refer to them when we're organized to spread the communication. So we have a list of maybe 40 organizations. I guess I could say from working with Mohegan Sun, of all those organizations that they've been partnering with across the region to get the word out. If you'd like us to provide that, I can send you the list. But we've been hesitant to get into the weeds till we can explain exactly how this is going to move forward, and until the employability regulations were completed.
And I think I saw him come into the room, but, we're happy to offer up our Director of Licensing, David Acosta, to be part of that educational process for people to understand what the licensing and registration requirements are going to be. And that's consistent across all the regions.
And he has been very helpful in starting the teaching at the top level of the Career Center. So he has been doing some briefings with us, Career Center executives. We want to make sure they really understand it before we go down out to the community.
Okay, great.
Should I go?
Next.
Okay. Good morning, Commissioners. I'm Pat Gentilia, the president of North Shore Community College. And I started at North Shore 6 months ago in January 2014. But prior to that, I was the dean at Atlantic Cape Community College in southern New Jersey, who oversaw the Casino Career Institute, as well as other responsibilities, and worked closely in partnership with the casinos and hotel resort properties in Atlantic City. Now, over the 14 years I worked at Atlantic Cape, I traveled extensively to many new gaming venues to help public higher education, gaming commissions, enforcement agencies, and other entities with education programs geared to the gaming industry, including domestic and international partnerships. What I've learned over that time is that the public-private collaboration between community colleges and private casino employers bears a lot of fruit. And I think you're hearing a lot of that this morning in terms of the collaborative efforts that are already going on and have been going on for several years. I think not only is it good for both the community colleges and the private employers, but it's good for the state, it's good for the labor force. So I'm going to give you a couple examples of what I know in terms of the win-wins that come from these kinds of partnerships. There's high-quality education and training programs, flexible, to meet the individual employer's labor demand needs. What you've heard this morning is a lot of people talking about, we had a discussion with the HR people, we talked with the training people. And what we learned when I was at Atlantic Cape is that that's who you listen to. What's their HR plan? How many jobs are going to be available in what areas? What kind of credentials are going to be needed? What kind of skill levels are they looking for? And then building the training programs both in the non-credit areas as well as in the credit areas to meet those needs. We found that employers are interested in both of those, not only the industry credential, but also pathways for their employees to get the credentials they need to move on in their education so that while they're an incumbent worker, they can move their way up. And one of you, I think, stated earlier that you do know that this industry is very good at promoting from entry level up. So that is one of the hallmarks, which I think is very positive, and why community colleges, not only in Atlantic City, not only here in Massachusetts, but across the country, have become very involved partners with the gaming industry. Community colleges act as knowledgeable intermediaries for the private employer, whose training and human resources are usually fairly limited, because they are considered essentially a cost center, okay? And may not be informed as to the abilities of the Commonwealth to help provide a strong potential worker recruitment channel. You've been talking about that, where are we going to get the people from? But also in continued incumbent worker training. The expertise of the community college in leveraging appropriate workforce development training support has become a critical asset to these employers. And you know, sometimes we forget in the bureaucracy that the language of government is not easily translated to the language of private employers, and I think that's where the community college has built an expertise in doing that, not only for the casino gaming industry, but for many private employers, and that will be brought to bear here as well. So community colleges understand what an ITA is, how to work with the Workforce Investment Board, where private employers sometimes may not know what those local resources are. There's a long-standing collaboration with the workforce investment boards in Massachusetts. Community colleges, like the three that we're talking about right now in the Region A collaboration, work very closely with their local WIBs to help with career navigation for dislocated workers, those are folks who have lost their job, not through their own fault, underemployed and unemployed workers. Every community college president, like me, has a mandatory seat on the WIBS planning boards and works closely in policymaking and planning with workforce development. So we sit at those meetings and talk about the needs that we see, and we hear from the employers and then take that back to our colleges to devise programs to help with that training. A large property, such as is coming into eastern Massachusetts with thousands of new jobs, will increase the local competition for skilled workers. You've already pointed that out. Where are the workers going to come from? And you're not the first to meet that concern. When I was in Atlantic City, for example, during the growth period, basically we were running out of bodies. Who could we train? How do we get those workers to the vacancies? At one point, not now, but at one point before the recession, there were sometimes 1,000 open vacancies in that city. So we did take a look and mapped out where could those potential workforces come from, looking at nearby commutable counties and so on to help with not only the recruitment, but also the training in those areas, and collaborated with our neighbor community colleges to make that happen. An example you've already brought up is in the food and beverage industry, where the labor market here in the Boston area is already pretty stretched for talented workers. It was one of the industries that even through the recession continued to grow in the Boston area in terms of labor demand. There could be difficulty finding appropriately credentialed culinary workers, but I think working closely with the community colleges, not only in the credit culinary programs that we have, but for example, in Atlantic City, we devised a 4-month program for those dislocated workers where they could get their serve safes, where they could get essentially nearly a semester, up to 11 credits of potential of credits down the line. Once workers are on board, though, you asked, so what happens after the initial big bump? Okay, and obviously, we saw that a couple of times, not only when the industry matured, but then new employers came to town. What happened at that time? How did you smooth out the training so that you weren't left with high capacity? And I think some of that has been addressed today, but there is also the issue of continued work. It's not just getting folks into the industry. It's also working collaboratively with the employer partners to educate the incumbent workers. And in Atlantic City, we're talking really 35 years of history of doing that. So it wasn't just getting the folks into the jobs, but a close collaboration. And I'll give you some examples of how there's a true return on investment to the private employers and to the region that we measured in Atlantic City. Community colleges work in close collaboration with the labor unions. Unite HERE is one of the major unions that have an established relationship with community colleges all across the country. In fact, the international training manager, Steve Schertel, for Unite HERE lives in Atlantic City and travels to all of these places. So there is a knowledge base with the unions. One example, that I could tell you is the culinary program that the unions had in Atlantic City and that are possible here for an apprenticeship program. The unions worked with their chefs in the properties to do the actual on-the-job work, and then the college provided the education part of the apprenticeship program in what was called the YTTW, or the Youth Transition to Work Apprenticeship. So these are the few of the direct benefits to the Commonwealth from a strong training partnership with the Commonwealth's community college sector. In July 2002, I was the project director for a United States Department of Labor sectoral planning grant. This was modeled on the Nevada Partners program that was in collaboration with Unite HERE. In this planning grant, we determined, you asked this question, where the labor is going to come from. Well, we determined that 86% of existing Atlantic City workers came from the county in which the casinos resided, okay? And that at the time, of course, was Atlantic County, and the county adjacent to it in terms of good commuting patterns. So that was the northern end of Cape May County and the southern end of Ocean County in southern New Jersey. So it's likely that the majority of jobs for the licensee in either Revere or Everett will be filled by residents in the host and nearby communities. In Region A, that would translate obviously to Essex County as a primary source, and Suffolk County, especially the city of Boston, as the next largest recruiting areas for workers. Now, the collaboration that Bogosian spoke about, Bunker Hill, Roxbury, North Shore Community College, would provide a majority of training coverage for those areas. And that training, as I said, is not only just to prepare when the opening of the casino resort comes to the area, but it's also that continued incumbent worker training that becomes important over time to both the productivity of the labor force and obviously the vitality of the casino resort over time. And I think as the economy continues to recover in this region, there will be increased competition for the workers who are attracted to the casino industry. And so there will be some recruitment away. We talked a little bit about the hospitality industry's turnover rates. In Atlantic City, it was around 26%. And so there was a need for continued backfill of those workers. It wasn't that people were leaving the industry, it was they were working their way up in the industry. And so you'll find, as I found here in Massachusetts, a lot of people who came from Atlantic City, who went on to Las Vegas, went on to Pennsylvania, are up here in Massachusetts. And so what happens is you really open up a worldwide career path for the folks in the local area. The hospitality industry is known for this higher turnover rate, and one of the things we tried to do in Atlantic City was to get our arms wrapped around that. So we did a planning grant, again, because that's what colleges do. We research, we look into it, and we looked at the demand for a particular group, another group I think that we'll be serving here, and that's the English as a Second Language group. So we worked with Caesars Entertainment, and we did a case study. At the time, Caesars Entertainment had 3 casino hotels in Atlantic City, a total labor force of about 14,000 employees. Before the English as a Second Language training began, they had a turnover rate of 24.6%, which was typical of the industry. Then, with the community college, who leveraged a state workforce training contract, English as a Second Language classes were conducted for incumbent workers, uninterrupted, twice a year for 3 years, with an average attendance of 350 student workers per year. Post-training, the annual turnover rate of that core of English as a Second Language student workers was only 6.7%, a huge reduction in turnover from the industry average. So there's real benefits to the continued incumbent worker training in this industry. So here's some specific outcomes that we got from that case study. Of the guest room attendants, the control group of employees who did not receive English as a Second Language training had a turnover rate of 27.2%. The ESL trained workers' turnover rate was 12.5%. Of the public area porters, control group without English as a Second Language turnover rate was 24.8%. Turnover rate of porters who took the English as a Second Language training was 2.7%. Okay. Over the 3-year period, 183 employees were retained as a result of partnering with the community college to provide incumbent worker training. Now, assuming replacement cost of 3 months' worth of wages, the total retention savings realized were $850,000 for that employer, while the total cost of paying employees to attend the English as a Second Language classes provided through state workforce development contracts was $320,000. So the return on investment for the employer for training was 266%. In addition, customer service scores in the hotel rooms division reached an all-time high during that 3-year training period. So what we found there was key success factors for both higher productivity, lower turnover rate, increased vitality of the industry, making sure that local workers were able to have the skills, retain the skills, advance in the career were this. Number 1, a willingness on the private employer's part to partner with the community college that provides both training service and acted as a public-private liaison to the state. We've already found that, for example, in Region A, with outreaches from both Mohegan Sun and from the Wynn properties. Private employers' willingness to train the potential workforce and incumbent workers. Again, we're seeing that with all of the casino partners across the state. A willingness to commit internal dedicated resources, and we've heard that commitment, at least in Region A, from both Mohegan Sun and Wynn properties. So quite frankly, over time, the community college casino training collaborations that I saw in Atlantic City generated many other benefits besides the ones I've talked about, including philanthropic support, development of the community, and so on. Really that entry-level sort of portal for a global career path and obviously economic development for the region. So I hope that that gives you some idea of what I think are the benefits of what you started here and truly the outcomes in other areas. So what I've heard this morning in terms of folks working together to not only reach out to the community, to work with the private employer, to hear what their HR plans are for both onboarding and over time. I think that you know, the investment that you've made in this collaboration will pay off in big dividends.
Comments?
You know,
Thoughts?
you're a wealth of knowledge, and I'm sure all of your colleagues will, if they're smart, they will utilize that knowledge. Are there things that you didn't hear this morning, meaning additional training, additional collaboration with operators? Are there a few things that you think need to be worked on? We spoke a lot about culinary, and there was some mention of security surveillance and whatnot. Is that something?
Well, I think building the pathways for us, I know, for here in Massachusetts, it's been a learning experience, both for the community colleges and for the folks who are working both on the credit and the non-credit side. We've worked, when I was at Atlantic Cape, to help them with getting the knowledge that we had at that point and sharing that knowledge. And I think they've done a very good job in sitting down with the employers and listening. I mean, that's really the first place where you go. In terms of the state, those workforce development contracts are essential. I know a lot of people worry about how much OJT or how much workforce development funding comes from the state for what appears to be a fairly wealthy industry. But when you really think about the return in investment for the state in terms of having your workers and your local residents prepared for not only to get into that industry, but work their way up that industry, and you know, not only maybe stay in Massachusetts, but now have a global career path. You'll find a lot of the folks that I've met even here at Mohegan Sun, for example, came from Atlantic City. You know that as well. And having that training ground not only helps that individual, it helps the community. It helps that family. It provides that self-sustaining career path. And for the populations that we're targeting, those folks who are immigrants, those folks who are unemployed, underemployed, those folks who are looking to get in at an entry level and work their way up, this industry still provides that. And I think it's a good mix for the regional economy, because a lot of the other jobs that we prepare people for are fairly high skill level, where you need to get at least a bachelor's degree, so, or maybe even beyond. And so I think that this mix is very good for the economy, and the community college partnership helps those local folks get those skills that they need to enter, and then works over time. And obviously in Atlantic City, we're talking about decades of work for the community college. So that work hasn't gone away. That work has continued.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I wanted to follow up on that a little bit because all this is enormously exciting. I think back to about a year and a half ago when we began these conversations and see how far you've come in putting this all together. But I wondered about the degree of collaboration across the community college area that's going on, from the very high level, the kind of strategic planning, to the actual course level. I looked at the curriculum for the courses. The Art of the Cake particularly caught my eye. So I wondered about the plans for cross-facility collaboration, because it strikes me that if you find the course that truly works, everybody would benefit from that.
Bill can talk to that.
I think even though the community colleges, as I think you appreciate, is a decentralized system, we
Right.
don't have one whoever
Right.
sitting up there
Right.
delivering orders. I think on this initiative, the community, and particularly the 5 or 6 community colleges that are most involved, have come together, are learning from one another. We may not do everything exactly the same,
Right.
but that's going to be in part a function of
Right.
the casino developers we're working with and their needs. But I do think there's a level of collaboration here that, if not absolutely unique, is very positive. And to be very honest, we know a certain extent, our reputations are on the line on this one. So the order has gone out, don't screw it up.
It's a good order.
I worked at the executive office of community colleges before I worked at Bristol, so there is this central place where, you know, the presidents sit with the executive office, and when good things are happening, you tend to see replication, and there's a lot of strategic planning going on, even to cross-pollinate the codes of things. Right now, the community colleges are applying for a grant to look at working with MIT to sort of look at numbering of courses, so if someone takes something at Bristol Community College and then they want to go to Holyoke, and they have a similar curriculum crosswalk. So I think as we start developing this, we'll see that you have an opportunity to make this system-wide, because there is that kind of infrastructure. So I think
That's great.
exciting.
Well, and Commissioner, I know we've said it a few times, but this whole stackable notion.
Right.
So when you do workforce training, it's about getting them the skill for the job.
Yeah.
But we've now got agreements internally that, oh, that's going to be worth so much credit, that goes to this degree, that goes to this certificate. So that's being defined. And that type of discussion wasn't all that frequent
Right.
10 years ago. And it's happening very much these days.
And I've seen a change, too, in the industry in terms of valuing the degrees and the credentials. I would say probably a while ago, that may not have been so true. They were just looking for the skill level. But that industry has changed, too, as global competition has heated up. You know, they really do value the credentials that their employees bring. I'll give you one example. When I was in Atlantic City, Borgata took their mid-managers, and we broke up into modules the hospitality management degree, and taught, they used their tuition reimbursement funds to bring our community college faculty on site to provide non-credit modules that added up to credit, and then also added up to an associate's degree in hospitality management, with an articulation agreement onto Stockton, which is the nearby four-year public college, to continue on and to get your hospitality management bachelor's degree. So there's more of an interest today in the gaming industry in educating their workers and in having credentialed folks in their supervisory and management levels.
We're going to have to move on, but this is great. It's very exciting. It's total serendipity that you should end up here, and it's a great resource. We're glad to have you.
Glad to be here.
Did want to mention that we will be meeting with most of the secretaries from the various secretariats in the governor's executive branch who have work going on relative to us to help facilitate the working relationships between all of our permitting and all the stuff that's going on, including Secretary Caprellian for the workforce and labor business. So just keep that in mind, that we have a commitment from the governor and the governor's people to try to really pay attention to maximize the upside of this. If that can be helpful in your work, let me know. Thank you all very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm going to suggest a brief break. And we will pick up again with the third item on our agenda, I believe, which is Director Griffin.
Hello again, Commissioners. In one of our previous public meetings, the Commission asked for clarification regarding the Division of Professional Licensure application process as it pertains to private occupational schools, and I think specifically gaming schools. The Commission was concerned that there not be undue duplication with our own process to certify a gaming school. You may recall that Division of Professional Licensure regulates private occupational schools in areas as diverse as nursing to mortuary science, and to include private gaming schools. They do not, however, oversee community colleges who will soon be offering training, as we just witnessed, related to gaming. The DPL review is thorough, covering areas such as facilities, curriculum, equipment, instructors, staff, and ownership. The department may inspect school records, student files, enrollment agreements, and such. And no change in name, address, or ownership of a school can occur until the department approves the requested changes. So I've included the application, which is required, a completed application is required to be filled out by the applicant. A required fee is also required. Certification from the state auditor that the applicant is financially qualified to operate a school is required. The applicant is also required to submit the amount determined by the state auditor, a bond or an irrevocable letter of credit payable to the Commonwealth to be held in the trust for the benefit of the students should the school close unexpectedly. Inspection reports from the local building inspector certifying that the premises comply with the state building code, an inspection report from the local fire department certifying that the premises comply with local fire codes are required. So in terms of the timing, I'm told that if the applicant files a complete application with the Division of Professional Licensure, that part of the process takes about 4 to 6 weeks. Prior to that, 90 days prior to that application process, the state auditor has about 3 months to look at the financial records. So unless you have, if you have any questions.
So the total, theoretically, the total would be 5 months, something like that?
In the best case scenario.
In the best case, right. And can they operate on a provisional basis, some like the way we license sometimes, while that's pending? Because 5 months.
I don't think so. I don't think so.
Okay. So then the next question was whether our application form looks pretty reasonable.
Right, I
was-
did include our application because I think we looked at the 2 application processes and we wanted to make sure that our process used the information that is provided by the prior process.
Right. Yeah, that didn't look onerous to me in the context of all the other stuff.
Great.
Okay.
Is there any way to speed up that process? Is there anything that we could do to help speed up that process? That is a long time.
And that's the best case.
It's the best case.
Do we know what the average is?
You know, it was not easy to get that information, so.
I'm not very concerned about the time in a vacuum because a lot of what's required here, if somebody's trying to set up a new school, I think it's very much warranted. If they're going for a renewal, then they're already operating, which is your previous point, Mr. Chairman. So while on its face value, requiring, looking at the financials, looking at the bond, et cetera, may seem like a lot of work or like a long time. I think it's appropriate and, given the context of certifying something that has such a significance in the people that are going to patronize these schools. So
that's an important point. DPL is there to protect the public, and there have been cases where private occupational schools have closed unexpectedly. and students have already enrolled and put deposits on classes. So, DPL is there to, for the most part, ensure that these kind of cases don't happen.
Yeah, I don't quarrel with the thoroughness, and I maybe don't quarrel with the time. I just wondered if we could be thorough quicker.
We've met several times with DPL, and they seem very cooperative, and I think will do their best to ensure that occupational schools receive the attention that they need.
I'm sorry.
Do we know how many schools, or do we have any idea of, the quantity of schools that may be interested in applying for this license?
Currently, there's one private occupational school that is currently licensed down, I believe they're located at the Emerald Square Mall. And so I would anticipate that they may be interested. They're currently, I think, training for the Connecticut and Rhode Island markets. We know that the community colleges are interested, but we really don't know how many others are out there.
I don't think we had to worry about population of these types of schools. I think it was more of the consumer protection effort, which drove a lot of these licensing guidelines. I don't think we had a list of, we know that these 12 that do it somewhere else in the country will want to come into Massachusetts. It was more worried about, fly-by-night poker school getting set up and taking a lot of people's money.
Right. We were interested in maintaining a high level of a standard. As you
And I
said.
apologize if I've insulted any company that's actually called Fly-by-Night Poker School.
Well, Jill, this is good, this is helpful, this is certainly what I was interested in, and it looks on the face of it okay, although I share Commissioner McHugh's concern a little bit, but it's just important, let's just keep an eye on it. There ought to be a tickler file somewhere to just make sure we keep in touch and see how long it does to make sure the system does work.
Okay.
Great.
Great, thank you. All right, that's all for you. So if we're ready to move on, next on the agenda, we have guests from Penn National Gaming who are here to present their draft at this point, vendor and workforce plans. So I'd like to welcome Lance George. Hi.
Thank you.
And Steve O'Toole, who is the current general manager of racing at Plain Ridge. Is he here?
He's in
Somewhere. Corey Whitaker, vice president of talent management for Penn National. And Karen Bailey works in public affairs for Penn National. So pursuant to Penn National's Category 2 gaming license conditions, they have submitted the initial vendor and workforce plans as required. They submitted them on May 28th to the commission. It was required 90 days from the award of their license, which was awarded on February 28th. Condition 8 required an affirmative marketing program for businesses providing goods and services during the operations of the casino. You have in front of you the two plans. The workforce plan is in response to condition 13 that required a marketing plan to the unemployed and underemployed. So I'm going to talk a minute about the process that I took for soliciting feedback from the public regarding these plans. I'm going to highlight strengths, areas of concerns, and then I'm going to give Penn National a chance to respond if that process sounds good to you. Yeah.
Sure.
So I asked for feedback via email from the statewide Community College Collaborative, members of the State Department of Labor, the Mass Gaming Commission Vendor Advisory Team, all about 20 members, the Mass Gaming Diversity Coalition, also included in the vendor team, and from a database of individuals who have expressed interest in diversity, workforce, or supplier issues that I have been collecting. And at this time, that's about 80 individuals. We received 7 comments from, mostly from the vendor advisory team, the community colleges, and the Mass Diversity Coalition. Some individual responses and some submitted as a group. So, let's see. So I'd like to start first with the vendor diversity plan. I'm looking for the comments. The vendor plan is generally a solid plan. Penn adopted the Commonwealth's procurement goals for state agencies outlined in an October 2013 memo from the Operational Services Division, which sets goals for state agencies at 6% minority, 12% WBE, and 3% veteran business enterprise. They based their plan on a 2010 disparity study prepared for DCAM. They used industry guidelines for inclusion of goods and services, specifically the American Gaming Association research. They outlined the networks that they have established and would use to outreach to targeted populations that include the Mass Gaming Commission Vendor Advisory Team, the State Supplier Diversity Office, the Greater New England Minority Supplier Development Council, the Veteran Business Owner Initiative in, I believe, New Bedford and Worcester, local chambers of commerce, the Center for Women and Enterprise. Their diversity committee includes top-level leadership, including Lance George, their general manager, and their vice president of purchasing. And Penn National has implemented 2 policies that I was actually excited to see included in the plan. Any contract that is put out to bid that equals or exceeds $5,000 must include at least 1 MBE, WBE, or VBE bid, and at least 1 bid from a Massachusetts vendor. Penn National also outlined a fast pay program that provides payment to vendors within 7 to 10 days upon completion of the project. This addresses a need that has been highlighted by small businesses across the Commonwealth. And I'm hoping that current applicants who may or may not be in the room will consider this policy as well. So I have shared areas of concern. Karen and I have been in conversation, and I am concerned about that their definition of minority is limited, and it does not align with the state definition. And I don't think that, I think this was a mistake. So I'll ask her to comment on this. The diversity committee, while I highlighted that they include top-level leadership, we had suggested external members in their original plan for construction. I'm concerned that in this plan, the external members are included on a rotating basis without clarity about the term, with no standing membership. So those are my comments. And why don't I just talk just briefly about, since I just found the comments from the public, why don't I just highlight some of those? So we had comments from the Hispanic American Chamber Institute, who said that in his, Nader Acevedo, who's the executive vice president, reviewed the documents, and he said they did a good job and cover all his concerns and questions. The Mass Gaming Diversity Committee was concerned about some of the exclusions that were listed in the plan. And I'll have Penn talk about that. Warren Bacon responded that they actually have businesses in some of the areas that the American Gaming Association indicates that there aren't many minority women businesses. So we can talk about that a little bit later. This is the hard and soft exclusion list that was included from the American Gaming Association. So those are the public comments that are pertinent to the vendor plan. And so if Penn is ready.
Sure.
Thank you.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission.
Morning.
Morning.
Thank you. Thank you again for giving us the opportunity to present our workforce and our supplier diversity plans to you today. Also, many thanks to Director Griffin in her efforts to help gather feedback from the various interested parties related to the outcome of our plans to promote a diverse workforce, provide ongoing opportunities for diverse members of our business community, and to address unemployment and underemployment in our region. Thank you also for introducing the colleagues who are with me today. It's been about a month since we submitted our workforce and supplier diversity plans. We have received a significant amount of feedback through Director Griffin's outreach to the vendor advisory team and labor agencies in the Commonwealth. As a result, the documents you have before you are working documents. The feedback we received from you today, and the feedback we will receive from other partners will be reflected in the next draft of this document following today's meeting. If I may, I'd like to turn it over to Karen Bailey to provide the highlights of our initial plan, as well as our action items as it relates to the feedback we've received. Corey and I will be available to answer any follow-up questions you guys might have.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I'll follow Director Griffin's lead and just talk specifically on the vendor plan first, and then we'll go back to the workforce feedback and come back to me on that. As you'll notice, the document looked probably very strangely similar in terms of its format as our construction plan that we submitted prior to this, and alongside, as well as the fact that we've also followed the state's goals, state's procurement goals, and setting our own, as Director Griffin mentioned, 6% minority-owned businesses, 12% women-owned businesses, and 3% goal for veteran-owned businesses. As noted by Director Griffin, the definition of minority in the plan that we submitted, that will be revised to be more consistent with the state definitions, so that we keep that consistency. In addition to that, we've obviously already established a diversity committee within our team at Plainridge to ensure that this plan is implemented. In addition to our internal Plainridge and Penn representatives, we're also going to invite 2 external organizations to participate in our committee for the purposes of helping communicate opportunities, as well as troubleshoot any challenges that we may encounter in fulfilling this plan or implementing this plan successfully. As Director Griffin mentioned, the current draft as you had it has a rotation or suggested a rotation of these external members. And after a conversation with her and some of the feedback, we will be changing this to reflect the representation of 2 organizations on a permanent basis to have representatives within that committee. Those 2 organizations are the Massachusetts Supplier Diversity Office, as well as our partner, the Greater New England Minority Supplier Development Council, of which we are members. We will also adjust the plan to reflect our consideration of adding additional external organizations based on the interest by those organizations, as well as the needs for our communications and implementation needs for this plan. None of what we've written has been intended to preclude or supplant any one particular disadvantaged group or over another, but simply to ensure that we have that representation and allow for ongoing and broader representation as the plan is, as it's needed to implement, as well as the interest, as I noted before, for people to participate or organizations to participate. As we see these organizations and these partnerships, whether they're veteran business organization, women organizations, business organizations, minority business organizations, in the gamut of all the disadvantaged categories, all of them are a key pipeline for us in our communication of opportunities, as well as the development of relationships with our target constituencies that are outlined in the plan. I'd also like to talk a little bit about the role of the American Gaming Association's guidelines for procurement and supplier diversity. First of all, this plan, or excuse me, the AGA document, which should be also in your packet. This is a document that was created in 2008 by the industry, and how the industry looked in 2008 is certainly different than what it looks like today. It certainly has grown, particularly at the regional level. So you'll see certain references that kind of don't make sense for Massachusetts, but certainly have applicability elsewhere in the country. But I like to emphasize the fact that these are guidelines. They're not a Bible. They're not set in stone. And that we have obviously the ability and intend to have the flexibility to reflect our purchasing program to accommodate for, say, industry representatives that may have not existed in 2008 to service the gaming industry that now may exist here in Massachusetts. So we certainly allow for the ability to adjust to local market conditions. And also, like what we discovered in some of our research with the construction plan, this has also prompted the AGA to do an update of some of their research regarding supplier diversity within our industry. So hopefully we'll start to see some work on that in the coming months. But to that effect, or to that point, and what I mentioned before, is that this is why it becomes so important for us to have partnerships with all the various supplier diversity membership organizations to help feed this pipeline, to help advise us on what the market availability is for us to tap into that. And we will, in our next iteration of this plan, note the fact that this is, in fact, these are guidelines, not set in stone, and are not intended to exclude anybody purposefully, but instead to set a reasonable understanding and standard as to sort of what we have to look at as a licensed gaming entity in the state, and who we can and cannot do business with, or what opportunities exist. But with that said, as a national company, we do carry various services and product contracts at the corporate level, or we perform certain services in-house. Things like payroll, that is done in-house. Things like employee benefits, those are done at a national level, economies of scale, especially in the days of growing costs like healthcare. So those are things that are done at the national level. However, given the interest and opportunities that may exist with businesses here in the Commonwealth, it certainly gives them the opportunity to pursue opportunities, to pursue corporate opportunities with our company, and having those relationships is certainly important. I also wanted to highlight the recommendations forwarded to us about posting the RFP opportunities on our website. This is something that we have not done, simply because a lot of what we do at the RFP level is through our partnerships with the membership organizations of the target constituencies. But that doesn't mean we can't explore doing something like posting RFPs to the website. We do have to tackle some technology issues on that. But we're certainly going to take a look at that and sort of broadening the ability for people to research what business opportunities there will be for us, or with us, excuse me. And then Director Griffin highlighted two things that we're pretty excited about, and something that is a tried and true practice at other locations in Penn properties, and that is the threshold, the $5,000 contract, that $5,000 and above contract threshold, requiring bids from our target constituencies as well as Massachusetts-based vendors. That's something we've done before in practice, has been successful, and then we'll continue that here in Massachusetts, as well as the fast pay program. You saw that in our construction plan. We will be implementing that as an ongoing program with our procurement. That's all I've got on the vendor side.
Couple of quick questions, and I just want to go back to this fast pay program, because when we reviewed the construction plan, I might have missed it. You talked about the eligibility to participate. What are some of those eligibility requirements? It's great because, as you pointed out and Joe pointed out, it's a great way for small businesses to help with cash flow management issues, but what are some of the eligibility guidelines?
I think the big one, the reason why I put eligibility in there, I think the big one for us is ensuring that they're properly licensed, or if they're going through the licensing process to be able to do business with us through the regulations set forth by the Commonwealth. Okay. A lot of times in a lot of jurisdictions, we're given waivers so people can do business while they're going through the licensing process, so it doesn't stop them from doing business, but we maybe can't pay them right away until they are licensed. So that was just giving us that wiggle room, that if we're in sort of a situation like that, that happens in the construction side a lot, not as much on the procurement side, but I just wanted to account for that.
And you talk about having a local procurement person in Plainville. I guess to kind of make this happen, it's electronic, it's fast. I'm assuming invoices, et cetera, are going to bounce back and forth between Pennsylvania and Massachusetts.
Actually, for local procurement, everything takes place at the property.
Fantastic.
Yes.
Okay. My other question, again, just in terms of your targeting percentages, I'm assuming like everything you guys are, that's your target, but you're hoping
Correct.
To exceed those figures.
Correct. And I think as we've seen in other jurisdictions, over the course of the growth of the industry within the Commonwealth, you're going to start to see businesses that maybe today don't have casinos in their purview, but then a year from now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, could become major suppliers. So it's certainly, and that's something that we help foster and grow, particularly through, we feel that we achieve that through the $5,000 contract threshold requirements. So that if somebody has product or service X today that maybe doesn't quite fit, but then we work with them to determine how it might fit down the road. So that's sort of how the progression of that goes.
Okay. And just one final point, Karen. You guys are in a unique position because you're hoping to open next June. Not only for this plan, but also for the workforce plan. I was hoping, and it'd be helpful for us too, but it'd also be helpful for the stakeholders that want to support your mission and efforts. Is there any way we can include some type of calendar as to building back from opening date, need to have these types of vendors in line?
Sure.
That impacts, how we can assist you with licensing those businesses.
Sure.
Is there any way to, is best you can spell it out, kind of a timeline working back from that opening date as to when we know we need to recruit somebody who's going to be our vendor for X, and
Right.
maybe not to that level of detail, but kind of building out from those few months, again, because we're hopefully within a year of your open.
Certainly. Short answer is yes. Longer explained answer is on the vendor side of things. So we've got obviously all the purchasing that's going to take place to outfit the casino. So the non-construction but pre-opening fixtures, furniture, equipment costs. So a lot of that is done at the national level. However, what we do at the corporate level, but what our head of purchasing at corporate, who was unable to attend today as he was getting, I think, a slots delivery in Dayton, so he had to be there to accept that. what he does is he actually seeks out secondary supplier chain folks to do things like installation. So we might be building our signs in New Jersey because we have a certain design and a certain spec, but locally we'll need somebody to install it. And so he seeks out those secondary supplier chain vendors to be able to, that then fold into this vendor plan, his activities plan. And then the second part of that, I think Lance, once you have your procurement folks on board, particularly his finance folks, they'll be responsible for the ongoing element of that. But a calendar, yeah, we'll certainly take a look at that and put something together. I think Corey will have that on the workforce side with her hiring schedule.
Okay. And again, and I think we've talked about this a little bit before as it relates to the construction pieces. There is folks on the vendor advisory team representing relationships and connections to what we classify as this kind of creative economy group sector in Massachusetts that may help you reach some of your targets, but are certainly not the big businesses, but may help not only on the FF&U side, help you open your doors, but kind of in an ongoing basis. And again, it's not a sector that we instantly gravitate to, maybe through a Chamber of Commerce or some of the other stakeholders, but certainly those folks are out there, again, to help you have another avenue to buy Massachusetts products.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
I had a question that's really pretty basic about Appendix 1, the hard, soft, and non-exclusions, because I'm, particularly on the vendor side, having difficulty understanding conceptually how some of this works. If we look at Appendix 1 and the hard exclusions, and, for example, director's fees, what about director's fees would be biddable in the first place?
That's really what a hard exclusion is that there just isn't, it's not a spend, it's not a piece of our costs of operating.
You couldn't bid it.
Correct.
So, but you could bid aircraft fuel.
We hope you won't.
No, but just conceptual, I'm having a difficulty, I guess, with the concept of what we're doing on the vendor side. Is this addendum 1 something that's designed to include all categories of business cost?
It's supposed to
And
encapsulate.
then saying some are things for which you're going to solicit bids and some for which you're not, either because they're just not biddable or because there is no diverse supplier base to whom you could submit bids.
Correct.
Is that how it works?
Correct. So something like aircraft fuel. If there's a minority company that services aircraft fuel at Boston Logan for the use, and unfortunately Lance is not being given his own plane.
Right.
So let's just
Right.
Be very clear on that. I
Good
think he
news
was getting
for
a
us.
little excited over here. He's getting jittery. So, sorry, Lance. If we're a vendor at Boston Logan that met that criteria, then that would be something we would bid out then if it had that opportunity. But as it is, aircraft fuel is a pretty controlled product.
Right. So aircraft fuel is there because there's no diverse base typically, and director's fees are there because director's fees are an element of cost that's just not outsourced.
Correct.
Okay,
Well,
got it.
it goes to the
Thank you.
directors.
Thank you.
So, and we can do a better job of explaining some of this, or at least providing an introductory paragraph to sort of help clarify that, if that makes it easier.
Well, if there's other people who are as dense as I am, that might be useful.
Okay, Jill?
All right. So regarding the workforce plan, Penn National highlighted their relationship with the consortium of workforce leaders in the region, many of whom you heard from earlier today. including Bristol and Massasoit Community College and the local career centers. In their workforce plan, they have outlined a red carpet service training and interest in upward mobility and promoting education for their employees, including on-site classes in partnership with the local community colleges and a tuition assistance program. Penn National has indicated that they believe their workforce should reflect the communities around them, and as such, made commitments to hiring 90% of the workforce from designated host community of Plainville and the designated surrounding communities of Foxborough, Mansfield, Rentham, and North Attleboro. They have established a goal of hiring 10% of their workforce from individuals from ethnic minority groups. And I have also provided you in your packet a one-pager that outlines the demographics of Plainville and the surrounding communities based on the latest census figures, because I did want to highlight the implications of this plan regarding diversity. The Mass Gaming Diversity Coalition has indicated that unemployment, the coalition consensus that 90% local employment does not support a diverse workforce, and suggests that Penn National needs to expand the area. So I did want to highlight that concern.
Can I ask a question about that? Is that part of the host community agreement, correct? So it isn't something you have flexibility. You didn't just say, I'm only going to work from those, what, 5 communities?
Right, 90% workforce local hiring was part of our application.
Well, part of your application, but that, because it was included in the host community
Correct.
agreement?
Correct.
Okay.
So other areas of concern, more specific information would really be helpful regarding which Massachusetts communities would be targeted next for outreach if Penn National, through their best faith efforts, are not able to meet their hiring goals in the host and surrounding communities. For example, the areas of high unemployment, perhaps Taunton, Brockton, Fall River, Bridgewater. So more information about that would be helpful. Folks did comment that the workforce plan is very high level and does not include details specific to Penn's expected hiring at startup and over time, and expected hiring needs by job type and the pipeline approach to fill it. I know that some of this information has been shared locally with the community college and workforce and one-stop career centers, however. The plan does reference one-stop career centers and community colleges, but it lacks detail regarding their role in the process. So one suggestion was additional strategies on recruitment with roles and responsibilities for partners. So one-stop career centers may be helpful in recruiting folks from the host and surrounding communities in particular areas. So I think that is what I have. Okay.
Can I have a question? It's a bit of a follow-up from Commissioner Cameron's point. Remind me, you executed neighboring community agreements
Correct.
with communities that are not included here in the surrounding community list. Is that correct?
No, we have Plainville, obviously, as our host community, and then the
Yeah.
4 surrounding communities that we have our host agreements with.
Is there, am I confusing them with another applicant who had
think so,
the
yeah.
neighboring community that expanded it a little bit more?
That wasn't us.
This is the universe of all the
This-
surrounding
that was-
communities?
Correct.
Rainham.
Okay. All the agreements that you have with anybody?
Correct.
Okay.
Could I just ask that the screen change to reflect the one-pager demographics? These figures, this is for a later presentation.
It's 63, page 63.
You were going to say, Commissioner?
And I know what these demographics are going to say, it's like 93%. But, we just heard the presentation from Bristol, and Bristol and Massasoit are located in diverse areas, but they could train folks that you couldn't hire. Is that correct? Because of this 90% from
Well,
those 5 communities?
What we actually did address in this plan is the fact that if we find ourselves falling short of that 90% local, meaning Plainville and then our 4 surrounding communities, then we're going to expand that universe in concentric circles, which would include those locations, specifically targeting the more diverse populations as well as the higher unemployment region or areas of those concentric circles.
I personally would prefer is you draw those concentric circles out to target, the communities of the higher unemployment and underemployment.
We might have some bumps, some gerrymandering.
It can be a squiggly line, but,
Yes.
we know the communities around there, and
Right,
right.
if we look at a time, you have the benefit of, not a lot of time, but you also have the benefit of being able to back out. You know what 5 communities you need to target first. If you move into other communities which have some additional training needs required of those residents, that's a timeline that folds in with the community college's ability to kind of bring those people up to speed or do whatever training that's required. But I would prefer specifically going after some target communities to not only, achieve the goals of employing the underemployed or unemployed, but also, giving you the advantage of creating a more diverse workforce.
I would also like to suggest that although there are low levels of diversity within the host and surrounding communities, there is still opportunity to outreach to the the minority groups within those communities, and I'd urge you to do your best to reach out locally to those groups.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And another follow-up point to that, on another angle is every community in Massachusetts has a veteran services agent. They typically know everybody who's served in uniform from their hometown and can probably know personally who might be looking for work and who isn't, but that's a great network to also tap into.
Are you finished with your comments, Jill? I didn't follow exactly what the Jennifer James' concern about the WIBs and the one-stops, the insufficient collaboration with them or something. What was that about?
So I think the concern was that there weren't established roles and responsibilities, although the career centers were generally mentioned in the plans. It didn't seem that there was clarity regarding what their roles would be. And she actually suggested that an MOU between the WIBs and one-stop career centers.
And I'm happy to address that. We've been more or less operating under the umbrella that our consortium is the community colleges and the career centers. So we have included them in our initial kickoff meeting. As feedback to that, we have reached out to the career centers and such to say, we're happy to sign a MOU with you guys as well. We've just been operating under the impression that they were part of the consortium, but if they, if we need to single them out to do that, we're happy to do that.
Well, that was my reaction too. I mean, we heard the folks from the Community College Institute talking about how everybody's working together and everything's, is cross-fertilizing and everything else. And now, do you want to say something?
Mr. Commissioner, many of those organizations do have place to partnering that does have some definition.
MOUs with you mean?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
And so that, we have the MOU with Penn National Gaming, and then we have kind of the MOUs that feed in from the community.
Right. But the point here is not MOUs. The point here is collaborating together comprehensively. We don't want to just say to Penn National, keep signing MOUs to make everybody feel better. What we want to make sure is that there is the maximum utilization of the resources, the lack of duplication and wasted energy. And if, so I just, Jennifer James seems to feel like the lack of an MOU with Penn National is a problem. I don't know whether it is or not, but we ought to be, but particularly the guys from the Institute, who we have sort of seen as being the coordinators here, need to say, is it a problem? Should there be there? Is there some substantive issue, or is Jennifer just missing the boat here?
I think one thing too, that just because we've had this out for a month, and also in consultation with Director Griffin and some of the feedback, is that the Career Center specifically have a copy of the draft that's in front of you, and their feedback and contributions to talk about those roles specifically will be in the next draft of this plan. So there has been collaboration. I guess we always assume that if we're told to collaborate, we're going to collaborate, but we didn't know we always have to sort of spell it out necessarily to the chairman's point. But there certainly is, because as we're working with the community colleges, as you heard earlier today, the career centers are equally important to us because they are going to be the people that help us identify the unemployed. They also are going to be, and you'll see written in the plan, Corey's already started the process and setting up the dates to train the Career Center staff to understand what these careers are. So as the community colleges see it from an academic standpoint and a curriculum standpoint, it's also from a Career Center standpoint that, to go into food and beverage in the casino, or to go in as a slot tech, or to go in at any given entry-level position, it's not, to some people it'll be just a job. It's a way to pay the bills, and that's all they sort of see it as. But for other people, these are career starting positions, and I'll just insert my own personal observation of the industry that I've been a part of now for almost 7 years, is that it's one of the few industries really where you can start at the bottom and move to the top. You still can do that. Our vice president of communications at corporate started as a bus greeter in Atlantic City. Now she's in the senior executive team of a large casino corporation. You see dealers and slot techs that have moved up those chains. So we have career pipelines. We like to keep our people. We like to train and move our people through our pipelines. We don't like to lose them to our competitors, although we know that happens. And so that's something that's also integral to the efforts that Corey's already embarked on, and that is training the Career Center people to understand sort of the long view for those that they're looking to place.
We are scheduled, along with the community colleges, to do a tour of all of the career centers. We've met on 2 to 3 different occasions with the career centers. The last is part of the big consortium meeting, and our next step was to really get out to the career centers, visit, and then really understand all of the tools available. I mean, we believe that they are going to be our funnel of candidates into our applicant system, so they are a vital, very important part of our application process. So it's really just getting out there on the ground, meeting with them, and using them really as our kind of spoken hub kind of recruitment center.
I would echo the chair. We don't necessarily need to send you scrambling off to sign more MOUs, but obviously you allude to it in the proposal in terms of how you plan to maximize resources and services available to the Department of Labor and Workforce Development, and subsequently other career centers, and just spelling out from your benefit how you plan,
Right, sure.
how you're going to utilize, services that, they'd probably be chasing other employers to offer their services.
We're excited. We're very excited to be working with them. They have a very nice operation, some very good technology, so it'll be very instrumental for us.
Okay, I don't want to make too much of this, but it does look like there's a little bit of a disconnect. Some of the questions that Jennifer James from Labor and Workforce Development are asking is questions that I know from what you said earlier have already been answered. So there's not a perfect fit there.
Yeah.
And which
There's
is
a
nice.
meeting coming up.
Okay.
When
All
is
right, fine.
We've got one in July and one in August. We've been, working really with the local folks. I'm not sure, what Jennifer,
What trickles up.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
Okay.
So we've been really on the ground with the local, RTM
Okay.
folks.
But it's the ones at the top who talk to people and make noise in the world, and we want the ones at the top to know that
Right.
this is going on too.
So maybe an invitation to one of these meetings would be
Yeah.
appropriate.
Alice has been, but Jennifer has not.
Okay.
Okay. Great. It's, I think on the agenda, does it say vote?
It does say vote.
But it sounds like you want us to put that off until you bring the plan back with some edits or corrections or updates.
Or you can put, as we did with construction, I guess approve with conditions of the edits that we mentioned we'll be making, and we'll submit those edits once they're complete.
It's up to you, Commissioner Stebbins and Director Griffin, however you want to handle it.
I think that would be appropriate, as we did with the construction plans.
You all right with that, Commissioner?
Yeah, I think that's
Okay.
fine.
Do you want to put a motion on the table?
Sure. Mr. Chair, I move that the commission approve the Penn Gaming's operational vendor plan and workforce development report, subject to the updates and additional information as requested.
And that would be submitted to us in final form sometime not too distant future.
Second.
Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it unanimously.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
And now, item D, just before lunch. But don't feel any pressure. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. So, Commissioners, this should be brief. I wanted to start the discussion about reporting, and so I have, that's it, I have a one-page mock-up, and I should note that the data in this mock-up is not real. It does not reflect Penn National at all. But this is an example of the type of information that, or a proposal for the type of information that we could be collecting and reporting. I envision a report like this could live on our website. So I wanted to start that conversation and get your reaction. I envision that we would have a report on each licensee, and then we would have a report similar to this that compiles all of the information and gives a statewide report of all the applicants, rather licensees.
Commissioner Stebbins and I have already looked at this. Other thoughts?
Well, no, I think this is great. The fact that we can have and communicate a dashboard type view of the statistics as they move along the project and the life cycle. My reaction was that I believe there's a lot of other areas that this applies to, and I know there's an ongoing effort in terms of performance management, where this is clearly going to be a subset, or a flavor of these would be a subset, but the data behind what is obviously attractive reporting, I think is wonderful.
Okay.
So we should put the actual data soon.
Yes.
Yeah, I think the format's excellent also. It is a dashboard type document, easy to read, gives you a real snapshot of information in a format that's just really user-friendly.
Anybody else? Okay. Anything else on your agenda?
No, I'm
All
complete.
right.
Thank
It's
you.
quite a morning. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Busy
Thank you.
morning.
Yeah, busy morning. All right, it is a few minutes of 1. Let's see if we can, let's take a lunch break and see if we can be back by 1:45. I think we spent a lot more time on this topic than we had intended to.
We could do racing, we got two pro forma.
Yeah.
Okay, fine.
And we have a guest.
Fine. Sorry that first item took a lot longer than we had anticipated, which often happens, but
That's no problem.
thank you for your patience.
Important stuff and interesting stuff.
Yeah.
Thank you, Commissioners. We'll be very brief today. I know that the transition over to racing agenda items sometimes feels like a bit of a non sequitur, so I'm just going to pick right up on what I heard this morning by reminding everybody that this summer, as we speak, we have approximately 4,500 occupational licensees, W-2 and 1099 employees, both ours and our operators, hard at work, ensuring a successful live racing season. So one of them is with me here today, and you'll hear a little bit from him in the next agenda item. In the office, I just wanted to update you on some projects that we're wrapping up. The racing division has been, we enlisted the assistance of an independent auditor, as you know, to review the financial accounting system that we inherited and the distributions that we were making to various trust funds. That project is wrapping up, and we should be bringing a report to you in front of you sometime in July. Concomitant with that is the wrap-up on our crossover to the new system that was approved as the result of a competitive bid process last year. And staff members are working with the fiscal department to look at, create how those reports are going to interact with the Commonwealth's accounting system. And we're doing some beta testing right now, and in fact had a very good beta test this morning, so we're very close on that crossover as well. The other item in the administrative update is the request from Suffolk Downs to reschedule some live racing dates. Tuesdays in July, we've come before you in May and in June with similar requests. Again, this is primarily rooted in the lack of enough horses to maintain a 4-day-a-week race card. We did approve that. An approval letter is included in your packet from June 13th. That's pursuant to the authority that you delegated to me last year. So we did approve that, of course, with the condition that those are rescheduled later in the racing season. My understanding is that the parties are working together to, they're working on an amendment to their existing purse agreement to work on this issue. Which brings me, if you don't have any questions, to item B.
Are these, I'm not sure I understood. Are these days, the Tuesdays that are canceled in July, is the hope that they will be reinserted, those days will be reinserted later
in the season.
Okay.
So to maintain a 3-day-a-week racing season versus a 4-day-a-week or a 5-day-a-week, you need to have a sufficient horse population to draw on, and
Right.
frankly, we're just not there.
Yeah, no, I
Yeah.
got it.
Yep.
They're not being canceled
Rescheduled.
permanently right now.
Not
One-
yet.
At least the hope is.
Not yet anyway, right?
Right, right.
All right, so agenda item B is the request from the Standard Bred Owners of Massachusetts for recognition under Chapter 128, which is the Agriculture Statute, Section 2J, talks about the recognition of a representative organization of standard bred breeders and owners. And we brought before you Mr. Ed Novak last year. He is the president. He was the president last year. He is still the president this year. And the request is in your packet, and we would certainly recommend that you take this into consideration and recognize him. But he's here to answer any questions that you have regarding the Sire Stakes program or what it is that his organization does.
I just want to say, I come before you every year on an annual basis. By law, we have to apply for recognition. And we manage the breeding of standardbred racehorses in the Commonwealth, as well as the Sire Stakes racing program. We've been the organization that does this since 1992, and would like to continue to manage the program as we go forward.
And I gather we don't have any other applicants for the position, right?
Not that I know of.
And remind us how many breeding farms there are. There's in the 70s, 75 farms
Well,
in Massachusetts?
Yeah, I guess it depends who's counting the breeding
Right,
farms.
right.
But I think in a recent survey that was done by the racing committee, the number for standardbreds was 45 or 50, I don't know. It's at least that much right now.
Right.
Again, depending on how you define a farm or a breeding farm or a training farm.
Right, right. And of course, there was a significant success last year with at least one standardbred horse.
Yes,
that
there
had a
was.
Terrific year, yeah.
Yeah. Can't get much better than that.
No, Massachusetts bred horse,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yep.
Won the Hamiltonian, I don't want to speak in code, and
Yes, he
it was
did.
a great triumph for
Yep.
Massachusetts bred horse.
Any other questions, thoughts? I guess if Commissioner Dernberger, or Director Dernberger is in favor, then I would tend to go along, so. Commissioner
We need a vote, right?
Cameron, do you want to
Sure.
close the vote?
Mr. Chair, I move that we formally recognize the standardbred owners of Massachusetts and its president, Ed Novak, to be the organization to represent standardbred breeders in the Commonwealth.
Second.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
See you next year.
All right, yeah, see you next year.
You or somebody else.
Let's see if we can do it in 45 minutes. We'll take our lunch break, so we'll be back here at 1:45.